They took everything from me with a single stroke of a pen. My health insurance, gone. My retirement fund, vanished. My mother's heart medication, now a luxury I couldn't afford. They called it restructuring. But I knew better. It was theft, plain and simple. And while they celebrated their million-dollar bonuses in glass towers, I sat in my dark apartment, planning their downfall. They thought I was just another disposable employee. They were wrong. This is the story of how I brought an entire company to its knees. My name is Emily Hartman. And until that Tuesday morning in October, I believed in the American dream. 34 years old. 5 years with Silverline Consulting, steady climb up the corporate ladder. I'd built my life on the promise of stability, decent salary, comprehensive health benefits, a 401k that would see me through retirement. In Crestwood, Ohio, that was enough to call yourself successful. The email arrived at 8:47 a.m. Mandatory meeting, conference room B, 9 a.m. No subject line explanation, no context. Just Mark Renshaw's name at the bottom. My direct supervisor and VP of operations. I remember finishing my coffee, straightening my blazer, thinking maybe it was about the quarterly reviews. Conference room B smelled like leather and disappointment. Mark sat at the head of the table, his Armani suit impeccable as always, his expression carved from stone. 2 HR representatives flanked him, people I'd worked alongside for years, now avoiding my eyes like I was already a ghost. "Emily, please sit." Mark's voice had that corporate neutrality that meant someone's world was about to shatter. He slid a manila folder across the mahogany table. Effective immediately, Silverline is implementing a comprehensive restructuring initiative. I opened the folder, the words blurred together. Benefits adjustment, cost optimization, market realignment. Corporate speak for devastation. My health insurance would terminate at month's end. My 401k matching suspended indefinitely. The pension plan I'd been investing into for 5 years dissolved. Even my parking spot, a small thing. But somehow that detail made my hands shake. "This is a joke, right?" My voice sounded foreign, hollow. "I've been here 5 years. Perfect performance reviews. I just led the Morrison acquisition HR integration. The decision is final." Mark's fingers drummed once on the table, his wedding ring, worth more than my annual salary, catching the fluorescent light. "This affects multiple employees across various departments. It's not personal, Emily. It's business." Not personal. My mother's face flashed through my mind, her tired eyes, the pill bottles lined up on her kitchen counter like soldiers. Her heart medication alone cost $400 a month without insurance. My insurance, the insurance that was no longer mine. "You're taking everything," I whispered, my professional composure cracking. "My health coverage, my retirement, my—" "You're retaining your base salary and position," Mark interrupted, already gathering his things. "Many would consider themselves fortunate in this economy. The company needs to remain competitive. Sacrifices must be made." Sacrifices. He stood, smoothing his tie. Hermes, I noticed, probably $300. His cufflinks caught the light, platinum, custom engraved. This man who drove a Tesla Model S, who vacationed in Aspen twice a year, was telling me about sacrifices. "The documentation includes all relevant details about the transition," he continued, moving toward the door. "HR will be available for any questions, though I should note the decisions are non-negotiable. We appreciate your understanding during this difficult time." Difficult time. For whom? I sat there after they left, staring at the papers that had just rewritten my future. Each line felt like a theft, each paragraph a betrayal. 5 years of 60-hour weeks, of missed birthdays, of just one more project. All of it meant nothing. I gathered the papers with trembling hands. My reflection caught in the conference room window, behind me. The Silverline logo gleamed on the wall, a silver arrow pointing upward, their motto beneath it, "Ascending together." Together. The word tasted like ash. Walking back to my desk, I passed the executive floor photos, the leadership team smiling at last year's charity gala. Champagne glasses raised. Mark was there, center frame. His bonus that year had been $2.3 million. I knew because I'd processed the paperwork. Now I understood where my benefits had gone, straight into their pockets, redistributed upward while we descended alone. I sat at my desk, the notification still glowing on my screen. Meeting completed. Around me, colleagues typed away, unaware that their safety nets might be next. Or maybe some already knew. Maybe they'd had their own meetings, their own manila folders. My phone buzzed. Mom. Hi, honey. Just reminding you about my cardiology appointment Thursday. Thank God for your insurance. These visits would bankrupt me otherwise. I couldn't answer, couldn't form the words. Instead, I stared at that manila folder, feeling something cold and sharp crystallize in my chest. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd simply accept it. Another casualty of corporate greed. They had no idea what they'd just created. The pharmacy tech looked at me with sympathy I couldn't bear. That'll be $147.50 for the month's supply. I stared at the white paper bag containing my mother's heart medications. Entresto, Eliquis, Carvedilol. Pills that kept her alive. Pills that, until 2 weeks ago, cost me a $30 copay. Can you just give me a week's worth? My voice cracked. Professional Emily Hartman, reduced to begging a 20-year-old pharmacy tech at CVS. I'm sorry, but these medications can't be partially dispensed once ordered. You could try the manufacturer's assistance program. I make too much for assistance programs. Too much to qualify for help, too little to afford $1,800 a month. The corporate middle-class trap. I left empty-handed, my mother's pills still behind that counter. The drive to her house in Riverside stretched eternal. How do you tell the woman who worked 3 jobs to put you through college that you can't afford to keep her alive? Mom was in her kitchen, organizing her pills for the week in the plastic organizer I'd bought her last Christmas. Emily, perfect timing. I was just about to make lunch. Mom, we need to talk. Her hands stilled. Mothers always know. I explained everything, the restructuring, the benefits, the cost. Watched her face cycle through understanding, anger, then that terrible resigned acceptance that comes from a lifetime of being stepped on by systems bigger than yourself. We'll figure it out, she said, patting my hand. I can skip the Entresto for a while, just keep the blood thinner. You can't skip heart failure medication, Mom. People do what they have to do, honey. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, spreadsheets glowing in the dark. The numbers didn't lie. Mortgage, $1,400. Mom's medications, $1,847. Utilities, food, car payment. Her home health aid twice a week. My salary after taxes, $3,200 monthly. The math was simple and cruel. I started looking for second jobs. Uber driver? My car was too old. Freelance HR consulting, non-compete clause in my contract. Sell the house? In this market, I'd lose everything I'd put in. My phone buzzed. An Instagram notification. Mark Renshaw had posted from the Silverline Leadership Retreat in Scottsdale. Golf courses and champagne toasts. The caption, strategic planning with the best team in the business. Blessed, what meters leadership? Silverline success. I zoomed in on one photo. There, on the presentation screen behind them. Q3 profits up 47%. Operational Efficiency Initiative success. Operational Efficiency Initiative. That's what they called destroying our lives. Something made me dig deeper. I still had my HR access. They'd been too lazy or confident to revoke it. I pulled up the executive compensation reports, the ones technically available to all employees but buried under 17 menu clicks. The numbers glowed like accusations. Mark Renshaw, $500,000 salary. $2.8 million bonus. CEO David Morrison, $2.1 million salary. $8.3 million bonus, CFO. Jennifer Walsh, $450,000 salary. $2.2 million bonus. The cost-saving restructuring had saved the company $3.2 million annually. The executive bonuses had increased by $3.7 million. They hadn't just taken our benefits to save money. They'd taken them to line their pockets. I kept digging. Found the board meeting minutes from June, marked confidential but still accessible through my credentials. There it was, clear as day. Proposal to redirect employee benefit funding to performance bonuses for retention of key leadership talent. My hands shook as I took screenshots. They'd planned this for months, while I was organizing team-building events and processing their expense reports for $500 lunch meetings. They were calculating how much they could steal from us. The next morning, Mom called. She'd had a dizzy spell at the grocery store. "It's nothing," she insisted. But I heard the wheeze in her voice, the fluid building in her lungs. Without the Entresto, her heart was already struggling. I drove her to the ER. 7 hours waiting. Tests they ran twice because the first ones weren't conclusive. The bill would come later. I knew. Thousands more in debt. The ER doctor, young and tired, pulled me aside. "Your mother needs to stay consistent with her medications. The gaps in treatment are causing deterioration." "I know. There are programs." "I know." He looked at me. Really looked. Saw something in my face that made him stop mid-sentence. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "The system is broken." The system? But systems don't break themselves. People break them. People like Mark Renshaw and David Morrison and Jennifer Walsh, who saw human lives as line items to optimize. That night, after I'd gotten Mom home and settled, I sat in my car outside her house and opened my laptop. I still had those screenshots, the compensation reports, the meeting minutes, evidence of their greed. A normal person would have sent them to the labor board, filed a complaint, hired a lawyer, but I wasn't normal anymore. I was something else now, something they'd created with their cruelty and indifference. I thought about their Instagram posts, their Tesla payments, their children in private schools paid for with our stolen futures. I thought about my mother rationing heart medication while they celebrated record profits. No, the system wouldn't deliver justice. The system was designed to protect them. But I knew their secrets. I had access to their files, their emails, their financial records. 5 years in HR had taught me where all the bodies were buried. They'd taken everything from me thinking I was powerless. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The lawyer's office smelled like old leather and crushed dreams. Patricia Hoffman, recommended by a friend, reviewed my documents with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd seen this story 1,000 times. "You have evidence of misappropriation of funds," she said, adjusting her reading glasses. "The board meeting minutes are particularly damning. But Emily, you need to understand what you're up against. I understand they stole from us. Legally, they restructured benefits within the framework of Ohio employment law. Unethical? Absolutely. Illegal? That's harder to prove." She leaned back, her chair creaking. "Silverline keeps Brennan, Hayes and Associates on retainer. 40 lawyers, unlimited resources. They'll bury you in motions before you ever see a courtroom. So what are my options? Realistically, file a complaint with the Department of Labor. Maybe you'll get a fine levied against them in 2 to 3 years. Or take the severance they'll offer to make you go away quietly. They haven't offered severance. They will. Once you make noise, probably 2 months' salary and a non-disclosure agreement." She slid my documents back across the desk. "I'm sorry. The system is designed to protect them, not you." That word again. System. I left her office and sat in my car, engine off, watching rain streak the windshield. 2 months' salary. Enough to buy silence, but not enough to buy my mother's medications for a year. Not enough to replace what they'd stolen. My phone rang. "Mom." "Honey, I'm at the pharmacy. They're saying there's an issue with the insurance." "I'll handle it, Mom. Just come home." "But the pharmacist says, please, just come home." I heard her confusion, her worry. Another weight on her already struggling heart. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, laptop open on the kitchen counter, going through Silverline's digital architecture. 5 years of accessing their systems had taught me their patterns. They never changed passwords, never revoked access properly. Security through obscurity and arrogance. I pulled up Mark's email. His password was still Leadership 2019. I knew because I'd helped him reset it twice. His inbox loaded, thousands of messages spreading across my screen. There it was. Email threads with David Morrison. Subject: Project Clearwater. My breath caught. Clearwater wasn't about benefits. It was about the pension fund. They weren't just stealing future benefits, they'd been skimming from existing pension investments, redirecting returns into shadow accounts. The screenshots filled folder after folder on my desktop. Jennifer Walsh's emails revealed more. Tax evasion schemes, offshore accounts in the Caymans, fake consulting fees to shell companies they owned. This wasn't just corporate greed, this was criminal. I kept digging. Found personal emails mixed with professional. Mark's affairs, 3 of them. All with subordinates, all accompanied by promotions and raises. David's cocaine habit, discussed casually with his dealer through corporate email. Jennifer's insider trading, coordinating with her brother at Goldman Sachs. By 4 a.m., I had everything. Gigabytes of evidence that could destroy them. A normal person would have taken it to the FBI. But I thought about Patricia Hoffman's words. The system protects them. Even with evidence, they'd get lawyers, cut deals, maybe pay fines. White-collar crime in America meant country club prison at worst, if anything at all. No. They deserved something different, something that would hurt them the way they'd hurt us. I created a new email account. Anonymous. Routed through VPNs and proxy servers, skills learned from years of corporate cybersecurity training, ironically paid for by Silverline. The first email went to a financial blogger known for exposing corporate corruption. Just a taste. A few documents about the pension fund, no names yet, just enough to spark interest. Within hours, his post was live. Breaking: leaked documents suggest major Ohio financial firm embezzling from employee pensions. I watched from my desk as the office erupted. Mark stormed past, his face red, phone pressed to his ear. Emergency meetings were called. The stock price dipped 2 points. But I felt nothing. No satisfaction. Not yet. That evening, I visited Mom. She was in bed, weaker than yesterday. The fluid retention was visible now, her ankles swollen, her breathing labored. "I'm fine," she lied, squeezing my hand. "Just tired." I held her hand, feeling the paper-thin skin, the weak pulse. This woman who'd given everything for me, now suffering because a handful of executives wanted bigger bonuses. "I'm going to fix this, Mom." "Honey, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." That night, I made a decision. The leak had been a warning shot. They hadn't connected it to me. Why would they? Quiet, reliable Emily, who still showed up every day, still processed their reports, still smiled in the hallways. They had no idea that I spent my nights documenting everything, that I'd installed keyloggers on their computers during routine maintenance, that I was building something that would destroy everything they'd built on our backs. I looked at the evidence spread across my screen. Financial crimes, personal scandals, corporate malfeasance, enough to end careers, destroy marriages, trigger federal investigations. They'd thought I was powerless. Another disposable cog in their machine. But they'd made a mistake. They'd left me with access, with knowledge, with nothing left to lose. The woman who'd walked into conference room B 3 weeks ago would have been horrified by what I was planning. That woman believed in justice, in fair play, in the system. That woman was dead. What remained was something harder, sharper, something forged in the fire of watching my mother suffer while they celebrated. I opened a new document, started typing, a plan, methodical, devastating. They'd taken my benefits. I was going to take everything. The plan came to me in pieces, like a puzzle assembling itself in the dark hours between midnight and dawn. My apartment became a war room. Whiteboards covered in timelines, sticky notes mapping corporate hierarchies, 3 monitors running simultaneously as I traced every digital footprint they'd carelessly left behind. Week 1 was reconnaissance. I studied Silverline like a surgeon studying anatomy before the first cut. The company's financial structure was a web of holdings and shell companies, but patterns emerged. They moved money every Thursday at 3 p.m. Automated transfers they thought were invisible. Their cybersecurity updated on the first Monday of each month, leaving a 12-hour window of vulnerability. Mark always worked late on Wednesdays, alone in his office with his computer unlocked. I mapped their personal lives with the same precision. Jennifer Walsh had a gambling problem, online poker, 5 figures in debt. David Morrison's son had been expelled from 3 private schools, each incident buried with generous donations. Mark's wife had filed for divorce twice, withdrawing both times after mysterious deposits appeared in her account. Every secret was a pressure point, every weakness, an opportunity. The technical infrastructure was laughably vulnerable. They'd spent millions on client-facing security, but nothing on internal systems. Why would they? They trusted their employees. Employees like me, who'd been there 5 years, who smiled in meetings, who still brought donuts on Fridays even after they'd destroyed my life. I learned to code at night, YouTube tutorials, and Stack Overflow becoming my professors. SQL injections, Python scripts for data scraping, basic network penetration tools. Nothing sophisticated. I didn't need to be a master hacker. I just needed to be better than their non-existent internal security. The keyloggers I'd installed weeks earlier fed me everything. Every password, every private message, every deleted file they thought was gone forever. I watched Mark type his affair arrangements, saw Jennifer manipulate quarterly reports, recorded David authorizing illegal wire transfers. But data wasn't enough. I needed psychology. I studied them like specimens. Mark was paranoid about his image, checking his Google results obsessively. Jennifer feared poverty, hoarding money despite her 7-figure income. David's trigger was his father, a senator who'd never acknowledged his success. The plan crystallized on a Thursday night, my mother sleeping fitfully in the next room after another hospital visit. I would destroy them in stages, like demolishing a building floor by floor, ensuring maximum damage with each controlled explosion. Phase 1, doubt. Anonymous leaks to create suspicion and paranoia. Phase 2, exposure. Strategic release of personal scandals to destroy credibility. Phase 3, evidence. Financial crimes delivered to authorities when they were weakest. Phase 4, annihilation. Complete systemic collapse of everything they'd built. Each phase would build on the last, creating momentum they couldn't stop, an avalanche that would bury them. I created dozens of anonymous accounts across platforms, email addresses, social media profiles, encrypted messaging apps, each one a different identity, a different voice, but all controlled by me. A distributed network of destruction they could never trace back to Emily Hartman, the helpful HR manager who still smiled in the elevator. My laptop screen glowed in the darkness, code scrolling past like digital rain. Every night after visiting Mom, after watching her struggle to breathe, I returned to my war room and refined the plan. Added contingencies, prepared for countermoves. They taught me to be thorough in my HR work, to document everything, to plan for every scenario. I was just applying their lessons to a different curriculum. The first strike launched on a Tuesday morning, anonymous post on Finance Watch, a popular industry forum where traders and analysts gossiped about market movements. The post was simple, almost casual. Anyone else notice weird patterns in Silverline's pension fund allocations? Numbers don't add up. Check Q2 distributions versus reported returns. I watched from my desk as the post gained traction. Within 2 hours, 3 analysts had confirmed discrepancies. By lunch, the thread had over 200 replies. Someone had pulled the public filings and found a $3.2 million gap. Mark's door slammed at 2 p.m. Through the glass, I could see him pacing, phone pressed to his ear. Jennifer arrived minutes later, her face pale beneath perfect makeup. David called in from the golf course, his voice carrying through the thin walls. "Find out who posted this." Mark barked at our IT director. "I want IP addresses, digital fingerprints, everything." But there was nothing to find. VPNs layered through overseas servers. The post made from a coffee shop Wi-Fi 3 towns over, typed on a laptop I'd bought cash from a pawn shop, and would destroy tonight. The stock dipped 5% by close. That evening, I sent the second strike. An email to a Wall Street Journal reporter from another anonymous account. Subject: Silverline pension fraud. Documentary evidence attached. 3 documents. Just enough to prove the forum post wasn't speculation. Internal memos discussing reallocation strategies. Spreadsheets showing the real numbers. Nothing traceable to any individual executive yet. I wanted them paranoid, suspecting each other. The reporter called Silverline for comment the next morning. I heard Mark's assistant frantically trying to reach legal, her voice pitched high with stress. Emergency meetings cascaded through the office. The board of directors conference called from New York. By Thursday, the journal article was live. Silverline Consulting under investigation for potential pension fund irregularities. The stock dropped another 12%. I watched them scramble from my desk, maintaining my usual helpful demeanor. When Jennifer's assistant couldn't figure out how to pull historical files, I volunteered to help, gaining access to even more damaging documents in the process. When Mark needed someone to coordinate the crisis management team's schedules, I smiled and said, "Of course, I'll handle it." They never suspected the one person still helping them. Friday brought the third strike, a Reddit post in our accounting that went viral. "My company just stole our pensions and gave themselves bonuses. Is this legal?" I'd written it in a different voice, younger, scared, seeking advice. The details were vague enough to be any company, specific enough that Silverline employees recognized themselves. The post exploded. 15,000 upvotes, 3,000 comments. Cross-posted to R, Anywork, R, Legal Advice, R, Finance. Current employees started commenting, sharing their own experiences. The woman from accounts receivable whose father's cancer treatment was denied. The janitor who'd lost his retirement after 20 years of service. Stories I hadn't even known. Each one adding fuel to the fire I'd started. Local news picked it up by evening. Ohio workers share horror stories of corporate benefit cuts. Mark called an all-hands meeting Monday morning. He stood at the podium, his usual confidence cracked, but not broken. "These anonymous attacks on our company are baseless and defamatory," he declared. "We've operated within all legal frameworks. These are disgruntled individuals trying to manipulate the market." I sat in the third row, taking notes like a good employee, hiding my smile as his hands trembled on the podium. After the meeting, I overheard Jennifer in the bathroom, on the phone with her lawyer. "I don't care what it costs. Find out who's doing this and bury them. But you can't bury smoke. You can't sue shadows." And I was both, insubstantial and everywhere, seeping through cracks they didn't know existed. That night, Mom was worse. The stress of our situation was affecting her heart. She tried to hide it. But I saw the pills she couldn't afford to take, the receipts for ER visits she couldn't pay. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, thinking I couldn't hear. "For not letting this break you." She had no idea. I was already broken. But broken things can be sharp. Broken things can cut. I kissed her forehead and returned to my war room. Phase 1 was complete. They were doubting, panicking, turning on each other. Anonymous tips to the SEC had triggered preliminary investigations. Their lawyers were billing overtime. Their stock had lost 30% of its value. But this was just the beginning. The first cracks in the foundation. Tomorrow, Phase 2 would begin. The personal destruction. They'd taken my benefits thinking it was just business. They were about to learn it had always been personal. Phase 2 began with Mark's affair. The photographs appeared on an anonymous blog at 6 a.m. Monday. Mark and his 23-year-old assistant, Katie, at the Marriott downtown. Timestamps showed midday meetings that corresponded perfectly with his calendar blocks marked strategic planning. The blog post was clinical, factual. Silverline VP uses company time and resources for personal affairs. By 7 a.m., someone had forwarded it to his wife, Patricia. I knew because Mark exploded into the office at 7:30, his face purple with rage, screaming at anyone within range. Who did this? Who did this? Katie didn't come to work that day. Or ever again, according to the termination paperwork I processed that afternoon, signed by Mark himself. Damage control. Too late. Patricia Renshaw's divorce lawyer contacted Silverline's HR department by noon. She wanted records, emails, expenses, calendar entries. As the senior HR manager, I was tasked with gathering everything. I made sure to include the emails where Mark had promised Katie promotions, the company credit card charges at lingerie stores, the harassment complaints from 2 other assistants that had been mysteriously buried. While Mark dealt with his imploding marriage, I turned to Jennifer. Her gambling addiction was worse than I'd initially discovered. She'd been using a Silverline subsidiary's account to cover her debts, moving money through complex transfers she thought were untraceable. But I had the receipts. Every transaction, every desperate bet at 3 a.m. when she thought she could win it all back. I sent the evidence to the Ohio Gaming Commission from another anonymous account. But first, I sent it to her husband. He was a prosecutor for the state. The irony was delicious. His wife stealing money to fund illegal online gambling while he put criminals in jail. Jennifer didn't come to work Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday. Her resignation letter arrived. Effective immediately. Personal family emergency. The official statement read, 2 down. David Morrison was harder. As CEO, he had better lawyers, better protection. But he also had a bigger ego. An ego makes people stupid. I leaked his son's expulsion records to an education watchdog blogger. 3 private schools, 3 cover-ups. The third incident involved assault. A younger student hospitalized. The family paid off with Silverline funds disguised as consulting fees. The blogger connected the dots, showing how David had used company money to hide his son's violence. But that was just the appetizer. David's cocaine habit was well hidden, but not invisible. He used a dealer who went by Tommy, communicating through encrypted messages he thought were secure. But Tommy wasn't as careful. When anonymous tips led police to Tommy's operation, they found detailed client records. David Morrison, CEO of Silverline Consulting, was buying 8 grams a month, paid for through shell company transfers. The arrest happened in the Silverline parking garage. I watched from the 5th floor as David was handcuffed next to his Lamborghini. Local news cameras capturing everything. The board of directors called an emergency meeting within the hour. By Friday, Silverline had lost 3 executives and 60% of its stock value. Clients were terminating contracts. The SEC investigation had escalated to criminal. The IRS had joined the party, freezing accounts while they investigated tax fraud. I worked late that night, officially, helping with crisis management, actually installing my final tools. A logic bomb in their financial systems, set to trigger Monday morning. Not destructive, I wasn't a terrorist, just revealing. Every hidden transaction, every buried report, every real number they'd disguised would suddenly become visible to anyone with access, including the FBI agents who'd be executing warrants at 9 a.m. sharp. The office was empty, except for security. I walked the halls one last time, my footsteps echoing on marble that had been bought with our stolen futures. The executive floor was dark, doors locked, nameplates already being removed. In the garage, I sat in my old Honda, looking up at the building that had once represented stability and success. The Silverline logo flickered, some bulbs burnt out, nobody left to care about maintaining the image. My phone buzzed. Mom's home health aide. She'd had another episode but refused to go to the hospital. Can't afford it, she'd said. I drove to her house, fury and satisfaction warring in my chest. We'd won. I'd destroyed them. But winning didn't bring back her health insurance. Winning didn't undo the damage to her heart. I found her in bed, breathing shallow but steady. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "How was work?" "It was productive," I said, holding her hand. She squeezed back, weak but warm. "That's good. I'm proud of you for staying strong through all this." Strong. If she only knew. I'd become something beyond strong. I'd become inevitable. Inexorable. The consequence they never calculated into their profit margins. Monday would bring the final phase. The complete collapse. FBI raids, arrests, asset seizures. The logic bomb would ensure nothing stayed hidden. Every crime documented, every theft exposed, but sitting there with Mom, I realized something. Revenge was a fire that consumed everything, including the one who lit it. After Monday, I'd be unemployed too. Probably unemployable once my role was discovered. We'd still have no insurance, no savings, no future. I'd won the war but lost everything else. Still, watching her sleep, remembering all the others suffering because of Silverline's greed, I felt no regret. Sometimes burning everything down is the only way to stop the infection from spreading. Monday would be beautiful devastation. They'd taken our benefits. I'd taken their empire. Monday arrived wrapped in thunderclouds, as if the weather itself knew what was coming. I arrived at 7 a.m., 2 hours before the FBI warrant would be executed. The office was nearly empty. Most employees were job hunting or had already jumped ship. The security guard barely looked up from his newspaper, its headline screaming, "Silverline Scandal Deepens." My keycard still worked. They'd been too chaotic to revoke access, too paranoid to trust anyone with the task. I walked to my desk one last time, powered on my computer, and initiated the final sequence. The logic bomb wasn't sophisticated. It didn't need to be. It was simply a program that removed all privacy settings, all access restrictions, all the digital walls they'd built to hide their crimes. Every employee would be able to see every document. Every email would be searchable. Every financial transaction visible. But more importantly, it would all be automatically backed up to servers I'd configured to forward everything to the FBI, SEC, IRS, and Department of Labor. Even if they tried to delete it all, copies would already be in federal hands. 8:47 a.m. I sat at my desk, watching the program execute. Green text scrolled across my screen as years of hidden crimes became visible. Pension theft, embezzlement, tax evasion, insider trading, bribery, everything. 8:55 a.m. Employees started arriving, logging in to find their computers displaying documents they'd never had access to before. Gasps echoed across the floor. Someone in accounting started crying. 2 junior analysts high-fived. They'd been right about the fraud all along. 9 a.m. The FBI arrived. They came in force. 20 agents in blue windbreakers, carrying boxes and hard drives. The lead agent, a woman with steel gray hair and tired eyes, announced that everyone should step away from their computers and remain calm. I watched from my desk as they headed straight for the executive floor. They knew exactly where to go, what to look for. My anonymous tips over the past week had been very specific. Mark arrived at 9:15, probably alerted by security. He walked through the front door and straight into handcuffs. The agents had been waiting. I watched them read him his rights, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. "This is a mistake," he shouted. "I want my lawyer." David Morrison was arrested at his home, according to the news alert on my phone. Jennifer Walsh at the airport, trying to board a flight to Costa Rica. The head of accounting in his office, sobbing as they cuffed him. By 10 a.m., Silverline Consulting was finished, trading suspended, accounts frozen. Every major news outlet had reporters in the lobby. The story was everywhere. Massive fraud at Ohio financial firm, trending on every platform. I began packing my desk slowly, methodically. 5 years of my life in a cardboard box. The photo of mom and me at my college graduation. The Employee of the Month certificates that meant nothing now. The stress ball shaped like a heart that I'd squeezed during every painful meeting. Emily. I looked up. The FBI agent with steel gray hair stood before me. Yes? Agent Sarah Chen, I need to ask you some questions about your role in the HR department. My heart stopped for a moment. But no, she wasn't here for me. She needed information about the executives, about hiring practices, about how the fraud was hidden. I helped her for 3 hours, providing documentation, explaining processes, being the helpful Emily everyone expected. She thanked me for my cooperation, gave me her card, said they might have follow-up questions. As she walked away, she turned back. I'm sorry about your benefits. I heard what they did to employees here. It wasn't right. No, I agreed. It wasn't. By 2 p.m., the building was being evacuated. Federal seizure of assets. Everything would be cataloged, investigated, sold to pay back the pension fund and defrauded investors. We had 15 minutes to gather personal belongings and leave. I carried my box to the parking garage, passing coworkers crying in the lobby. Some were angry at the executives. Some were angry at whoever had exposed it all. Most were just lost, wondering what came next. In my car, I pulled out my personal laptop one last time. Every anonymous account I'd created needed to be destroyed. Every trace of my involvement erased. The laptop itself would go in the river tonight, along with the others I'd used. But first, one final message. I logged into the original anonymous blog, the one that had started it all with Mark's affair photos. One last post. To the employees of Silverline, you deserved better. To the executives, you got what you deserved. To everyone else, never let them make you believe you're powerless. Sometimes the smallest person can topple the biggest giant. Sometimes all it takes is someone willing to light the match. I posted it and immediately deleted the account, closed the laptop, started my car. As I drove away, I saw them in my rearview mirror, Mark being loaded into an FBI van, news cameras flashing, the Silverline building dark against the storm clouds. They'd thought they were untouchable, protected by lawyers and contracts and the system itself. But they'd forgotten something crucial. Every system is operated by people, and people can be pushed too far. People can break, and sometimes, broken people break everything else. My phone rang. Mom. Honey. Are you okay? The news is saying Silverline is gone. I'm fine, Mom. I'm coming home. But your job? We'll figure it out. We always do. I drove toward her house, unemployment ahead of me, no insurance, no savings, no plan for tomorrow, but also no more Silverline. No more Mark or David or Jennifer stealing from people like us. Was it worth it? Ask me when Mom's next hospital bill arrives. Ask me when I'm applying for minimum wage jobs with my 5 years of experience at a criminal enterprise. But right now, in this moment, watching the storm clouds break over the city, knowing that 3 criminals were in custody and hundreds of employees would get their pensions back, yes, it was worth everything. The rain had stopped by the time I reached Mom's house, but the sky remained gray, heavy with the promise of more storms to come. She was at the kitchen table, laptop open to the news, her face a mixture of shock and something else. Was it understanding? She looked up as I entered, carrying my cardboard box of office memorabilia. It's really over? The whole company? Yes. I set the box down, suddenly exhausted. It's over. She studied my face for a long moment. Mothers always know, but sometimes they choose not to ask. Instead, she pulled out the chair next to her. Sit. I'll make tea. We didn't talk about Silverline, didn't talk about what would come next. Just sat together in the kitchen where she'd raised me, where she'd worked 3 jobs to give me a future, where that future had just dissolved into uncertainty. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing. Former co-workers asking if I knew anything. Reporters wanting statements. I turned it off. Let the silence fill the space between us. That night, I drove to the Cuyahoga River, 3 laptops in a weighted bag, The water was dark, swollen with rain, carrying debris from the storm. I stood on the bridge, watching the city lights reflect on the churning surface. Each laptop held pieces of what I'd done, together. They contained enough evidence to connect me to everything. The FBI would eventually figure it out. I wasn't naive enough to think otherwise. But by then, the executives would be convicted, the company dissolved, the message sent. I dropped the bag and watched it disappear into the black water. Emily Hartman, the helpful HR manager, sinking with it. Whatever I became next would be someone else, someone born from the ashes of Silverline Consulting. The next morning brought consequences. My bank account was frozen, standard procedure for employees of a company under federal investigation. The news had my photo now, along with every other Silverline employee, under headlines about victims of corporate greed. Victim. The word tasted wrong. Mom's medications ran out on Wednesday. We sat in the pharmacy parking lot, staring at the $147 $50 we didn't have. We'll try the assistance programs again, she said quietly. They won't help. I made too much at Silverline. But you're unemployed now, with frozen assets under federal investigation. She squeezed my hand. We'll find a way. We always said that. We'll find a way. We'll figure it out. We'll survive. The anthem of people crushed by systems bigger than themselves, refusing to admit defeat even as they're defeated. Thursday brought unexpected news. A victims fund was being established. The recovered assets from Silverline would be distributed to employees who'd lost benefits and pensions. It would take months, maybe years, but there would be something. Not enough. Never enough to undo the damage. But something. I applied for jobs. Grocery stores, call centers, anything that would hire someone whose last employer was featured on the FBI's financial crimes webpage. The rejection emails were form letters. The silence was worse. 2 weeks passed. Mom's health deteriorated without medication. I sold my car, bought her a month's supply, took the bus to interviews that led nowhere. Then Agent Chen called. "We know it was you," she said simply. I said nothing. The digital forensics team traced the origin points. The timeline matches your access logs. The methodology shows insider knowledge. A pause. But here's the interesting thing. We can't prove intent to harm. Everything you exposed was already criminal. You just revealed it. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not. I could hear her smile. But hypothetically, if someone did what you allegedly did, they'd be looking at serious charges. Unless, of course, they were a whistleblower. Whistleblowers are protected. I'm not a whistleblower. I never reported anything to authorities. No, you didn't. Someone else did. Anonymous sources. But if you were to come forward now, claim you were gathering evidence to report, that you were afraid of retaliation so you used anonymous channels, well, that would be different. Why would you help me? I'm not helping anyone. I'm just noting that we have 3 executives facing 20 to life, $47 million in recovered funds, and a clear paper trail of criminal conspiracy. What we don't need is a complicated case against a woman trying to save her mother's life. She gave me a lawyer's name, said I had 48 hours to decide. I sat in Mom's hospital room that night. She'd collapsed that afternoon. Heart failure advancing without treatment. The machines beeping, the sterile smell, the crushing weight of medical debt adding up with each breath she took. "I know it was you," she whispered in the darkness. "Mom, the way you've been, the timing, the computer skills you suddenly had." She squeezed my hand weakly. "I know my daughter. Are you disappointed?" She was quiet for a long moment. "They stole from us. From everyone. You just stole it back." "I destroyed everything." "No, baby. They destroyed everything. You just made sure everyone could see the wreckage." The next morning, I called the lawyer, signed the whistleblower affidavit, became officially what I'd always been, someone who saw crimes and reported them. The method might have been unconventional, but the result was justice. The FBI unfroze my accounts. The victim's fund fast-tracked mom's medical expenses. It wasn't enough, would never be enough. But she got her medications. She got treatment. I never got another HR job. Who would hire someone who exposed their entire company? But I found work eventually. Data analysis for a nonprofit that helps employees fight wage theft. They appreciated my particular skills. Mark Renshaw got 18 years. David Morrison got 22. Jennifer Walsh got 15 and lost her law license. The others got various sentences, fines, permanent bars from financial industries. Silverline Consulting ceased to exist. The building was sold, turned into affordable housing. The logo was removed, melted down, erased. But I still drive by sometimes. Still remember that Tuesday morning when they called us into conference rooms and stole our futures with fountain pens and indifference. They thought we were powerless. They thought we'd simply accept it, fade away, disappear into statistics about income inequality and corporate greed. They were wrong. My name is Emily Hartman. I'm 35 years old. I'm not a victim. I'm the consequence they never saw coming, and I'd do it all again. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge and justice. If you're listening to this tale right now, I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. Please subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories like this, and share your thoughts about Emily's journey. What would you have done in her situation? Your comments and perspectives make this community special. Until next time, remember, sometimes the smallest voice can echo the loudest.